A well-built client portal can not only save you hours every single week, but can impress your clients by giving them a great first impression of your business. The founders who have implemented this setup all tell me the same thing. Their clients are happier, their team is less stressed, and they finally feel in control of their projects. So in this video, I'm walking you through exactly how to build a client portal from scratch in Notion. One that handles multiple projects, tasks, and meeting notes all in one place. By the end of this video, you'll have a professional portal that makes your clients say, wow, these guys know their stuff. If you're new here, my name's Sam. I'm a Notion Solutions Specialist and the founder of Workflow Lab. And welcome back to my Build With Me series, where I break down the exact systems inside my agency HQ Notion template, trusted now by over 500 founders. So if you want to skip the build time and get this portal, plus my complete setup, including a CRM, a content manager, a finance dashboard, and much more, check out the link down below in the description. But if you're ready to get building, then let's dive in. So the first thing we need to do is set up all of the required databases, properties, and templates that are needed for this setup. So let's jump into Notion and start with a completely blank page. And I'm just going to call this client portal. Now, within here, we need 4 databases. We need a companies database, we need a client projects database, we need a tasks and deliverables database, and we also need a docs database. Now I've written them out like this. I can just highlight them all, click here, I can choose turn into, and then choose page. So let's start with the companies database. We'll click into this subpage, and at the very bottom of the page, we can choose database. Now we have the option to do this as an empty database and build it from scratch, but we can also choose to build with AI or choose any of the suggested templates that Notion has for us to speed up the building time. So I'm actually going to choose build with AI, and I'm going to say, please make a companies database with the company name, address, contact, email, and we'll do that just for now, and we can always add some more properties later. But we'll hit enter and let the AI do its thing. So here you go, you can see AI has built out some of these properties. So we've got address, contact email, phone number we could also add. Website would also be quite nice to have. I'm not going to choose industry for now. I'll hit continue. And then also it's giving me some different views that we can have, but I just want that all companies view. So we'll select that and hit done. And now we have a database that we can work from. So we'll move on, but we'll clean this up a little bit later. And now let's move on to the client projects database. We'll choose again the database option. And now this time, instead of building with AI, I'm just going to select this project template that they're given us for us. So I choose this. Again, it's giving me the option of what properties I want. I don't need priority or team, but I would like start and end dates, assignee. I don't need attach file. Progress would be good. And also, yeah, that looks good for me for now. So we'll hit continue. And then it's giving me some different views like so. I'm also going to add my projects, which would be a nice view to have. And then I can hit done like so. So that's been set up. Now let's move on to the tasks and deliverables. Again, I'm going to go to database, task tracker. Let's not have priority. Task type I don't tend to use, neither for effort, but I will have description, and we'll leave it like that for now. And then again, we've got all tasks by status, my tasks. That looks good. So I'm going to hit done like so. And then the final one is our docs. So we're going to come down, database, and we'll use the document hub like so. And yeah, all of this looks good to me. And we can also have by category. That's nice for you to have, and we'll hit done. So just like that, by using some of the templates and Notion AI, we can get the majority of these databases set up. So now let's go through and actually adjust the properties that we have. So starting with the company's database, this looks good. I'm going to open up this as a full page. And what I'll do is actually just come to customize layout, and I'll move the properties around like so. So the first thing I want to do is unpin all of these properties, and I want them to be in the side panel as a property group, which they already are, which is great. Now in the actual pin properties, I have a couple things that I'm going to need. The first one is a button property. So I'm going to find button, and I want to have this button be for any new deliverables that the client might like to request. We won't edit the automation yet, but we'll just leave that there as a placeholder. Then the next one I would like to have is the URLs for all the different things that aren't going to be living inside the client portal, but we still want them to have access to. So for example, we might want them to have access to their Google folder. So we'll put this at the top here for them. We might also have a URL to, for example, a analytics dashboard. So we can pop this in here. And then also I want to add a property in case they want to book onto a call with whoever the client lead is. So I'm just going to use this URL properties to say book call. And now I've got these 3 properties up here. The other property that is absolutely essential for them to have, but we don't need to have pinned, is the client access person property. And in the next part of this video, I'll explain exactly what that does, but we just want to make sure we have this there for them. And I'm going to move this up to the top so it's nice and obvious. Now, inside of Agency HQ, we have a bunch more properties to manage the company's database, but for now, that is the bare bones that we need for this setup to work. So I can hit apply to all pages and we can move on to the next database. So the next one is our projects database, or this should actually be called our client projects database. And within here, again, I'm going to just open this up as a page body and choose customize layout to make this a bit easier for myself. So the first thing I want to add that is absolutely essential for this setup is a relation to the company's database. So I can actually add this, let's put it inside of the property group here. So I'm going to have add property, I'm going to find the relation property, and then I want to relate it to the company's database. So here is my company's database. And I think I want to make this a 2-way relation. And on the company's database, I want this to be shown as the client projects relation. So I'm going to hit add relation there, and we'll just put this at the top for now. I'll explain again later why this is so essential. And then again, we also want to make sure we have the person property for the client access as well. And I'm also going to pop this at the top. And again, we could also customize a lot of the properties that we have now for what we really need to see. In Agency HQ, we have a relation to our services database. We have some time tracking in here. But again, just for the bare bones of making the client portal work, this is good for now. So I can hit apply to all pages and move on. Inside the task tracker, I'm going to again rename this to tasks and deliverables. Open this up as a page so we can look at this in the layout builder. Now for this database, the first thing that I want to add is a relation to our projects database, as we want to be able to group a number of tasks within each client project or a number of deliverables. So this time I'm actually going to add this to the layout itself, and I want to create a new property. So I'm going to hit more down here and choose the relation property. And we're going to come and find our client projects database. It's the one here. And I am going to name this client projects. Now I can have this as a 1-way relation. It will still work. If I wanted to have a progress bar in the client projects database that shows me the number of tasks that have been done, I could do this as a 2-way relation just so I can use that roll up. So we'll add this as a relation like so. And now we have the client project showing in the layout. Now I'm actually going to change this from a normal sort of added to layout section and change it to a relations group. And what that now allows me to have is this client project's relation slightly tucked away like so. If I really wanted to, I could also add this as a pinned property as well. But within Agency HQ, we work from multiple different projects databases. And so we show them in this relation group so we can have multiple relations. So that's why I've put that there. Of course, again, we also need that client access property. So we're going to come to person and add the client access. And then one additional property that we need that we didn't have in the other databases is a checkbox that is going to be the thing that we check so we can send a task into the client portal. And so inside the pinned properties, I'm going to add a property. I'm going to choose the checkbox or search for the checkbox. And for the checkbox, I'm going to rename this to share to client. So now we have the share to client checkbox that can now be checked on and off. And this is going to send it to the portal. Now, the final thing we need to add is a deliverable type, which is going to be a simple select property. As you know, this database is called tasks and deliverables. So for the actual deliverables, we want to be able to differentiate between which deliverables they are, whether it's a YouTube video we're making for the client, a website, if we're doing SEO services. And so we use this property for that reason. So if we'll come in here, we can choose single select, and let's call this deliverable type. This is also going to be used later so that we can have all of our deliverables be shared with the client automatically, rather than having to check the share to client checkbox every single time, because it typically is the case that if it's a deliverable, we need to share it to the client so we can get approval from them. Again, inside Agency HQ, we have a number of more properties for this. We have more time tracking, we have properties to have recurring tasks, but for this setup, this is the bare bones that we need to continue on. So we'll hit apply to all and go to our final database. So our docs database, which I'm just going to rename here. Let's open up the page and come to the layout builder. Again, for this one, we want to add a relation property to our client projects database so that we can group a number of documents to a client project. So let's come and find our client projects database and use client project as the name, and we'll set this as a two-way relation for now. And again, I'm going to switch this from a normal section to a relations group so it can be tucked away like so. We'll need the share to client checkbox in the pinned properties. So we'll add that like here and name this share to client. In the property group, we want to have that client access person property as well. And then because this docs database is going to double both for normal docs as well as meeting notes, I'm going to add a couple more properties just for the meeting notes. So inside of the property group, I'm actually going to add a section. This first section, I'll just call something like details or general. And then I'm going to add a second section, and this section I'm going to call meetings. Now within this section, I'm going to add, for example, a date property, which can be for the meeting date. And then I can also add a person property, and this can be for the attendees. And now I've got the meeting section or properties. I just want to make sure for this category item, one of the categories I have is meetings. So let's add this in here. And now we have all of that set up for meeting notes. And now that's done, we can hit apply to all pages, and we have finished the initial setup of these databases. Now there are just two more things that we need to do that I forgot to do this first time around for the databases in terms of their properties. And that's adding a relation to the company's database for each of the other databases. And it's also making sure that any of the assignee person properties, or the client access properties, I should say, don't have the notification set on. Otherwise that can be a bit overwhelming for the client. So for the tasks and deliverables database, I'm going to come back in here, come to customize layout. And inside of the property group, I just want to add a property. I'm going to make it a relation to the company's database. Let's come find it here. And then I want to make sure this is a two-way relation and add that relation here. And then for the client access property, I just want to come to edit property. And then for the notifications, I'm actually going to select this to none. And what this will basically mean is we use the client access property to share things with the client. But if it means that every time we tag them in this property for all of the different tasks and documents, every time that happens, they're going to get a notification via email from Notion. And so if you can imagine you share 10 deliverables at once, they're going to get 10 emails, which can be very overwhelming. So that's why we make sure that that notification is set to off. And we can hit apply to all pages. So let's do the same for the docs. We're going to come into the docs database, come to the layout builder, and inside of the details, we were going to add a relation to our company's database and make sure it's select to two-way relation. And then for the client access property, again, edit property, notifications set to none, and we can hit apply all. And then for the client projects database, let's make sure that the client access property is selected to none for notifications. We've already got the company relation, which is great. And then the same for the company's database. Let's just make sure that the client access property is select to none as well for notifications. Okay, so we've got the databases, we've got the properties. The final things to do is set up some of the templates, and we're going to need one for the company's database and for the client projects database. So let's start with the company's database. We'll come in here and choose this drop-down template menu from the new button. And you can see we've actually already got one set up for us. So I'm just going to choose edit, and we'll edit it from here. Now, within this template, the first thing I'm going to do is just have a welcome page for the client for when they first come in. So we can use a call out by doing / and call out. And in fact, I won't use a call out. We'll use a quote instead because it works a little bit nicer. So let's do / quote. So inside here, I just basically want to welcome the client. So I can say hi, and then I can actually use the @mention and @mention this current page. And the way I can do this, which is a bit easier, is coming up to these 3 dots and doing copy link. And I can paste this in here like so, and I can choose mention. So now it's currently @mentioning the page, the database template we're in. But what that means is when you apply the template to a new database entry, it will be given that name. So it'll be hi Acme Co or hi ABC Co, whatever the company's called. So hi, welcome to your portal. And of course you can put more information in here, but we'll just use this for now. Now below, what I also like to add is a video, and I'll record a quick link video of myself, which basically just walks them through the portal and exactly how it works. So that's all we really need for the template. But while we're here, we're also going to add some database tabs. So I'm going to come to customize layout, and then within here, I need to come to page settings, and I want to choose from the structure going from simple to tabbed. And so now this is going to put that page body that we just created as a new tab, which is going to be called content. And I'm actually going to rename this to start here, and we can choose a pin icon. And then now I can add the other tabs or the other database views that I want them to see. So the first one I'm going to add is a database view of our client projects database. And we can rename this to projects, and they can have a view of all of the projects that we're working on with them. And the way this filtering is going to work is that currently it's already been set so that if the company related to the project is this page. So for example, if we had a client project and related to it was Acme Co, if that is Acme Co that we're looking at, it's going to filter that option. So hopefully that makes sense. Bit of a confusing concept to explain, but you'll see what I mean when we start using this. So that's all we really need for the filtering. And then for the layout itself, I actually like to go for a gallery view. I don't have the card preview showing. I have the size on medium. And then for the actual properties that are showing, I just like to have it very simple. So I might have the end date and then perhaps the status. So it's nice and easy for the client to see. So that's the first one. The next one we're going to add is a view of the tasks and deliverables database. And this is just going to be for our deliverables. So I can actually rename this to deliverables. And I'm actually going to have a couple views of the deliverables database. The first one is going to be a board view. So I'm going to come to layout, choose board. And then what I need to do is change the filtering slightly. So again, we've got this company's relation related, which is great. We need that. But what we also need to do is differentiate these deliverables from the rest of the tasks. And so the way we do that, and as we spoke about earlier, is using the deliverable type property. So if we say that the deliverable type property is not empty, then that'll mean this will only show our deliverables and not our tasks. For our property visibility, I like to sometimes put the assignee in here. The due date can be helpful, and also the status. Actually, we won't use the status because we're looking at a board view, but that looks good for now. And then also we can just choose to sort this by the due date, which will basically mean the deliverables that need to happen first will come to the very top of the list. So we've got deliverables for a board view. What I can now do is duplicate this view, and I'm going to rename this to deliverable and then brackets C, as this is now going to become a calendar view of the deliverables. So I choose calendar view, show calendar date by due date in the month view. If we are doing deliverables over the weekend, I'll show weekends, but if we're not, I'll toggle this off to give us a bit more room on the page itself. For the filtering, this is great already as it is. And then also what we need to do is show some more properties. So again, for this, it would be good to see the status. It would also be great to see the deliverable type, and then that looks good for me for now. So we've got our projects. We've also got a couple of views of our deliverables. Let's now create a view separate just for any tasks that the client needs to do for us, or that we just want them to have visibility of. So what we can do is add a new tab, choose the tasks and deliverables option. We'll rename this just to tasks. And now for the filtering, we want to say that the company's relation is related, but we also want to say that the deliverable type is empty. And so this will now filter out any tasks that are deliverables. So we're just seeing tasks on their own. For the property visibility, it's currently showing everything. So I'm going to hide it all, and then I'm going to bring in the things that we want to see. So really, we just need the due date, the status, and maybe the client projects relation, because we're going to be working across multiple client projects. And again, I'm going to sort this by the due date. So the things that need to happen first come to the top of the list. So the next thing I want to add is docs and meeting notes. So I'm going to hit one more, add a new view, and now we're going to choose the docs database. Now the first thing I want to show are meeting notes. So I'm going to rename this to meetings. And now in the filtering, again, we've got the company relations set up for us. So that's great. And now a bit like the deliverables, what we want to do here is filter out the docs and just show things that are meetings. So for the filtering, we're going to come to add a new filter, come to category, and make sure that the meeting tag has been selected. So it's just going to show us meetings. As this is just for meetings, what it also means is for the properties that we're showing, I just want to show those meeting properties that we set up. So that is including the meeting date and the attendees. And we could even put the category in here if we decide to add multiple different types of meetings, but that looks good for now. We also may add in the client projects relation as well, again, because we're working across multiple client projects. And then again, for this, I'm going to sort this by the meeting date. So the last or latest meeting is at the top of the list. Now, again, I can just duplicate this tab so that we can set up the docs view. So we'll rename this to docs. For the filtering, we're going to just change this from the category contains to the category does not contain meetings. So it's showing everything other than meetings. For the property visibility, we're going to hide all. And instead of having the meeting properties, we'll just have more doc related properties. So we'll have category, client projects. Perhaps we could have last updated time and last edited by person and pop this like here. And then for the docs, what I also like to do is come to the grouping option and group these docs by their category. Now, instead of saying hide empty groups, what I'm going to do is unhide all the empty groups. And then I'm going to manually hide the meetings group and the no category group. So it shows like this for the client, and then things will fill in as we add them to the database with the correct category. So that's all the tabs we need set up. And I'm just going to adjust some of the icons here to make this look a little bit nicer. So we use a folder icon for the projects. For the deliverables, I like to use this package icon. And then for the meetings, I just would like to use this meeting icon. And now each of our tabs look something like this. So that's everything we need set up for the company's database. So we can set this to apply to all pages. And then now let's do the same thing for the client projects database. So we're going to come to the template and hit edit. Now, right now, Notion has set us up with this boilerplate template, which is imagining if you were adding tasks just freehand to the page, but we're not. So we're going to remove these bottom bits here. We could still have this about project section, because what we're going to do now is customize the layout, and we're again going to go to page settings. We're going to select the structure to be tabbed, and now we have the page body, which is the actual content itself. And we might rename this to something like project brief and give this a notes icon. And now we can have the other tabs, and these tabs are going to be pretty much the same as the client portals. But of course, if you want to add additional views that are just specific to what the team needs to see, you can also add them here. So for add a new tab, from within here, I want to have one for our tasks and deliverables. So as I've set that up, the filtering is now showing that as long as the client project is related, so as long as a task has been related to this client project, it's going to show. So that's perfect as it is. I'm going to add an additional filter, which is that if the status is not done, so it's going to basically clear away any tasks that have been set to complete. And then for the visibility of the properties, we don't need the client access, we don't need the companies. Deliverable type we'll use. We don't really need description. We don't need, actually, yeah, everything else looks like something we would need. And I'll just reorganize it like so. And then what I also will do is for the share to client box, I want to make sure that this is drawn all the way back just to have a bit more room for the rest of the other properties. And then again, we can sort this view by the due dates. We see the most important stuff at the top. So we've got a view for all tasks and deliverables. Now let's create a separate view just for the deliverables. So we'll duplicate this view. We'll rename this to deliverables, and this can be our board view. Change this to a package icon. We'll do the layout as board. And then for the filtering, we now want to make sure that we can remove this, and we want to make sure that we have the deliverable type is not empty. For the property visibility, I'm going to have the assignee this time because it's an internal view, and so it's important for people who are doing the task to know, or doing the deliverable to know that they've been assigned it. We will have the due date. We can have the status we don't need, and that looks good for now. And then again, we can duplicate this view and do a deliverable view for our calendar. So go to layout, calendar, show calendar date by due date. We don't need the weekends for our particular use case. And then for visibility, we want assignee, we want deliverable type, and we also want the status. And then the final view I'm going to have is just of the docs. I'm going to combine both docs and meetings in one section, not like we have on the client portal. So we've got the docs set up, we've got the correct filter set up. So all we need to do is just the property visibility. So I don't want to see the meeting date. I won't have the created time or the created by. Don't need the companies, don't need the client access, and don't need the attendees. So we'll just have these, and we'll also share this or square off the share to client checkbox. And then I can sort this perhaps by the last updated time. So the last thing that was touched will become to the top of the list. And now we've done that, we can apply it to all pages, and we have our databases set up in terms of our companies and client projects to show the tasks, deliverables, notes that have been shared to either the client project or the companies. Okay, so now that we have the correct databases and properties set up, now let's get these databases actually ready to be shared with the client. And the way we're going to do this is using Notion's new Granular database feature. This feature is locked behind their business plan, so if you want to use it, you will have to upgrade to that plan. But once you do, you'll be able to share things with clients securely from your master databases and without them being able to access everything inside these databases. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. So the way we do this is let's come to the company's database first, and we'll come up to the right-hand corner and click Share. Now you'll see we have the usual sharing permissions way of doing things, but if we come down to this page level access, you'll see we have this add a new rule. So what I'm going to do is come to add a new rule. We can select any of the person properties within the database. I'm going to choose the client access property. We're going to choose can edit. That is the most full access we can give them. And then I'm going to choose create a rule. And that's all we need to do. When I do that, you'll notice if we scroll across, this client access property has now got this key icon telling us that it's being used for this feature, but that's all we need to do for now. So we'll do the same thing for each of the other databases. So for the client projects database, come up here and choose share, add a new rule. Client access is the property we want. And then we can hit create a rule. And then we'll do the same for tasks and deliverables, share, add a new rule, client access, create rule. And then finally for the docs database, share, add a new rule, client access, create a rule. And now we have the Granular databases set up ready to use. By the way, if you're finding this video useful, please do consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. It really does help more people find this and helps us keep doing this types of videos. Okay, so we've got the databases and their properties set up, and we've also now got the Granular database permissions working. So now what do we need to do? Well, with our current setup, here's where we're at. So we can come to any of our companies. Let's say that it's this Health First Solutions. We can open this up as a page, and we can basically have the client be invited to this page. So let's invite, for example, Rachel, like so. So we'll invite Rachel with full access. So she'll now have access to this page, but she wouldn't have access to any of these tabs because they are other databases that she hasn't got access to. So for example, let's say we have a project in here. Let's just create a new project and call this project A, like so. She would not be able to currently access this. So if we wanted her to be able to access this, we'd need to do two things. First of all, we'll also need to add her as client access to this company. So we'll add Rachel in here. So this will now mean she has access to the company itself. And then what that also means is now that if we come to the project that we've related this company, she still wouldn't be able to currently see this. But if we come over to the client access property, we can also add her in here. So now that we have done that, she will be able to come to this page, come over to this projects tab, and actually see the project itself. So that's fine to have that bit of manual input for the projects. But let's imagine for now, if we come into project A and we have a number of tasks. So let's say it's task 1, task 2, and task 3. If we want Rachel to be able to actually see these tasks, whether that be inside of the actual client portal itself. So if I come back over, so if we want her to be able to come over to the deliverables or the task view and for her to see it, or even if we want her to be able to just open up the project itself and see the tasks, there's a couple of things that we'd need to do. First of all, for each of the tasks, we would need to come and open them up, and we would need to come to client access and add Rachel like so. And that would mean that she could go to the client portal, open up the project and see the tasks. But she still wouldn't actually see them inside of our special view that we've set up inside the client portal here in this task view. And that's because it's not been related to this company yet. And so if we wanted her to see it within the context of the portal itself, we'd also have to come to the task, open it up and make sure that this task is actually related to the company. So to future health first solutions. And once we do those two things, now she would be able to come to the client portal and see the actual task sitting in there and have access to it. Now, of course, that's quite cumbersome to do for multiple items. And so what we want to do is basically set up a series of automations where, first of all, we can have this share to client checkbox and just check a task and it be shared instantly to the client portal and to the client. We also want the ability to have some things like the deliverables that when it's created, it's automatically just shared and we don't need to share the check or check the checkbox to share to the client. And then what we also do, which is important, what we also need to do, which is important, is if we ever need to add an additional client to this client portal, obviously we could update the client access here, but we would also need to go through every single item we've already shared with them and update the client access there as well. So we want to set up automation that handles that for us as well. So that's what we're going to do in the final part of this video. So let's start with that share to client checkbox, checking things on and off. And we're going to start this on the docs database. So let's come to the docs database and come to this Thunderbolt icon. And that's what opens up our automation builder. And we're going to call this first automation share to client. Now the trigger for this is going to be the share to client checkbox has been checked like so. And when that happens, we want two things to happen. We want to relate this to the company database. And we also want to make sure that the client access has the correct person in it or people in it. So let's start with the company. So we're going to come to new action, edit property, we're going to find the company's relation and we're going to do custom formula. And so what we're going to do is basically do map, find the trigger page, so the actual document that's been checked with the share to client checkbox. We're going to come and find the client project relation, so whatever client project this document is related to, and then we're going to do a comma and do current, and then we're going to find the company, the related company of this. So what this is doing is it's finding our related client project, and then within that client project is finding the company that's been related to that client project, and then it's setting our company to that company. So basically when this is checked, this checkbox is checked, it's going to go to the project, and let's say it was Acme Co, and then it's going to set our company to Acme Co. And then we're going to do the same thing, but this time for the client access. So we do client access. We want to set this as add, custom formula. We're going to do map, trigger page. We're going to find the client project relation. We're going to do the current, and then we're going to do the client access property. So mapping the client access property from the client project essentially. And so now that is done, we can hit enable. So now let's test this. let's go over to our client project. We have project A that we created that was currently set for Health First Solutions. And let's say within this project, we have a new document that we're going to create. Let's just call this doc 1. Now, if we wanted to share this to the client portal manually, again, we would have to come here. We would have to add the client access and the company. But instead, I'm just going to check this share to client checkbox, which I can do from up here, or I can even do from down here by checking it here. And when I do check it, we should see, and let me open this up, we should see that the client access and the companies are filled out for us. So there you go. They've been filled out automatically for us just by hitting this share to client checkbox. And this now means over on the client portal, and I can actually click through to it here. We'll see that inside of the docs section, we should now see that we have that document waiting here for the client, and they'll also have the correct permissions to actually be able to look at it. Now, of course, it's great for us to be able to check the box and share it to the client, but what if we actually want to remove it away from the client? Well, let's add a second automation here. And instead of calling it share to client, we're going to say remove from client. The trigger this time is going to be when the share to client checkbox is unchecked. And now we're just going to basically undo what we did. So we're going to do edit property. Let's do the companies relation first, and we can just say remove. And we just want to remove any companies that are related to it and just hit done. And that's going to clear the company's relation. And then the same thing for the client access. So if we come to client access and we just say remove, and we don't need to select anything else, hit done. And it's going to clear the client access, and then we can hit enable. So now if we come over to this doc 1 and we open this up, if we do share to client and uncheck it, we should see that these two properties will be cleared, and therefore the client will no longer have access, and we can see that's happened there. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for the tasks and deliverables database. Now, this is going to be slightly different because we have deliverables that we want to share automatically with the client, but tasks that we still want to be able to do the share to client checkbox and share individually. So let's start with the share to client automation. So we're going to call this share to client. And now we're going to have 2 triggers. So we're still going to have when the share to client checkbox is checked, but we're also going to have when the deliverable type has been set, or when the deliverable type has been edited, and hit done. Now, we don't want this to only trigger when both things have happened. We want this to trigger when any of these things happened. So either the share to client checkbox has been checked or the deliverable type has been set. So those are the 2 triggers, and that's what's going to determine when it happens. And now the action. So first of all, again, we're going to set the company relation, custom formula, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to do map, trigger page. We're going to find the client project relation. We're going to do the current, and then we're going to find the company relation and do closed brackets. So when the share to client checkbox is checked, or when a deliverable type is edited, it's going to find the related client project, and then also find within that client project the related company and set this task company relation to that company. So mapping the things. So we hit save, and then the same thing for the client access. So edit property, client access. Let's make sure it's set to add, custom formula. We're going to do map, trigger page, client project, current, and then client access, and close brackets. And then we can hit save. Now, the additional action we want to happen here is in the case where it is a deliverable. So the share to client checkbox hasn't actually been checked, but the deliverable type has been edited, and so it's still going to be shared with the client. We still want to visually be able to see that it's been shared to the client. And so we also want to make sure that the share to client checkbox has also been checked. So we're just going to share to client checkbox and set it to be checked. So if it's deliverable, we're not actually checking the checkbox, but we still want to be able to see that it's actually been shared. So the checkbox should be checked. And then it also means that if we want to remove that deliverable from the client, we can still uncheck it and the other automation will handle it for us. So that's done. So we can hit enable. And now we also just need to add the remove from client. So we're going to do new automation, remove from client. And this is going to be the exact same as it was for the docs database. So we're going to find the share to client checkbox is unchecked. We're then going to just clear both the company relation. So choose remove and then just hit done. And then we're going to do the same for the client access property, remove, and then just hit done. And that's all we need to do. We don't need to do anything else, and we can hit enable. So let's go to project A and check that this is working. We'll start with just the tasks first. So I'm going to go to task 1 and I'll open up the side panel, and let's check this share to client checkbox. And we should see that the client access and the company come in automatically for us. There we go. So we've got Rachel and Health First Solutions come in. So that's working great. Let's also uncheck it to make sure that it is also removing it when we uncheck it. And there we go. That has gone as well. And so now let's also check for the deliverables. So I'm going to go over to this board view. And if I create a new task within here, it will automatically be given a deliverable type because of the filtering. So we have LinkedIn post. And as you can see, because it had that added, we've had Rachel and the company come in automatically. Obviously, if this was actually for a YouTube video, I could just switch that like here, and that's been done. And then again, let's just make sure that when I uncheck this, if I don't want to actually share this deliverable with the client, I can do so. And these should be removed from here as well, like so. So we've got that share to client checkbox working. The next thing I want to do is in the client projects database, if I create a new client project and I relate it to the company, I want to make sure that it automatically inherits the client access of that company. So the way I'm going to do that is come to automations, and I'm going to call this share to client. And now the trigger for this particular one is going to be that the company relation has been edited, and I can hit done. And then the action is that I want to edit the property and just make sure it has the same client access. So custom formula, map, trigger page, companies, current client access. And then I can hit save and enable. So this now means if I was to create a new project, let's call this project B, and I can obviously fill in all the other information, but as long as I relate it to the company by coming up here and choosing Health First Solutions, what we should see is obviously it's going to group within this Health First Solutions grouping. But if we come to project B, we should also see in the client access, it's been given to Rachel Thompson automatically for us. So we don't have to worry about that either. So we've got the share to client checkbox working. We've now got all of our client projects automatically having or being shared to the client. The final thing we want to do is inside of the company's database, if the client access is ever updated. So for example, if I decided I also wanted to share this with John and Rachel, I want to make sure that all of the projects that are already related, all of the tasks, the deliverables, the docs, all of those things that have that client access property set to one person is then updated to also include John. And the way we can handle this is with just one slightly complex automation in the company's database. So I'm going to come to the Blue Thunderbolt, and this automation, I'm going to say updated client access. And so the trigger is going to be if the client access option, and we don't want to say contains, is edited. And that's our trigger. Now, what we want to do is basically to map the new client access across all of our related databases. But to do that, we first need to be able to access them. And the way we do that is basically using the define variables feature. So we're going to do one first for our client projects. And so in here, we're going to edit as a formula, and we're going to do trigger page, and then we're going to find the client projects database and hit save. And then we're going to do the same thing for all of our other databases. So one for our tasks and deliverables, edit as formula, trigger page, find our tasks and deliverables, and hit save. And then one for our docs as well. So trigger page, docs, save. So now that these are able to be used, we can now come to add an action, and we're going to edit property, or edit pages in, I should say. Select the data source, and instead of selecting actual database, we're going to select one of our variables. So I'm going to select the client projects to start. I'm going to come in here and edit one of the properties, and the property I want to edit is the client access. And so I just want to choose add, or actually I'll choose replace in case we actually remove anyone. And we'll do client access, and then we do custom formula, and then we're going to do trigger page client access. So if you think about it, what this means is that if John was added, this automation would trigger. It would find the related client projects, and then just for those client projects, so for project A and project B, it's going to add or replace John so that John is added. Actually want to make sure that we set this to add. So it's going to make sure that John has been added to the client access here. So we'll do the same thing both for the tasks and for the docs. So we'll do tasks and deliverables, client access, add, custom formula, trigger page, client access, save, and then edit pages in. Finally for our docs, edit the client access, add trigger page, client access, and hit save. And then we should be able to enable this. And so a quick test to see if this works. As we know, we've got our client projects set up here, and project A and project B currently have just Rachel in their client access property. So if this has worked, if we come to the companies and we now add John in addition to Rachel from here, we should now see inside of our projects that John has been added to their client access as well. There we go, got John sitting there in project A and in project B. And of course, if we had any tasks and docs also sent to the client portal, John would be added to those as well. So there you have it, a complete client portal built from scratch. But to really run a scalable business, you need this working seamlessly with your CRM, your project pipeline, your content calendar, and your team, all of it talking to each other in one central workplace. And that's exactly why I built Agency HQ. So if you want to skip months of trial and error and get my complete operating system, the one trusted by over 500 businesses, grab Agency HQ using the link down below in the description. You'll get this client portal tool, a bit more an advanced version of it, that's interconnected to 6 systems ready to go from day one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.